broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your number one source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Hey there, Dominion fans! Welcome back. I feel like I need to be more regal with this music. Welcome back to another Dominion AfterBuzz TV after show. We're talking about The Narrow Gate, episode 203, and I couldn't be more excited. I'm your host, Zach Wilson. Joining me on tonight's fantastic panel, as always, Miss Jacque Borowski.
Hi.
But I'm so excited. We're just going to blow through all that because I want to introduce, if you don't know him already, this is creator and showrunner Vaun WIlmott.
Hey, buddy. Nice to be here.
He is the man responsible for bringing Dominion to us each and every week for both season 1 and season 2. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Everything's been great.
You're really I mean, we were really enjoying season 2. It's sort of blown us away
thanks,
a lot.
Man.
Before we dive into it, and I want to get your thoughts on season 2, and then we're going to break down this episode. You guys can tweet at me throughout the show at That's Zach Wilson, ThatZachWilson. I'll be following along. Send us your questions. You can also use the hashtag ABTVDominion. You can tweet it to Jacque Borowski at.
I'm at 123Jackie_B, but I left my phone in my purse on the couch, so you can tweet to Zach and he'll answer it.
Or if you're in the chat roll with us, just put it in there and I'll try to grab out those questions. Or Vaun, they can tweet you.
At Vaun WIlmott. I guess I'll have I'll have it right here.
We'll be following along. And the chat roll is the easiest way to reach us because I got my eye on that. But so we're going into season 2. Was there anything that you guys specifically set out to do differently for this season?
Well, you know, the first season was very insular. It was very focused on Vega. It was very much about kind of establishing the mythology and the world and the characters. And it was a big, complicated world, big mythology. So we kind of really kept it contained to Vega. One of the goals for season 2 was really just to expand that world, to blow it out, really utilize Cape Town, which is where we filmed, because it has a very diverse geography. It's got oceans and deserts and forests and all this amazing stuff. And then, of course, in terms of the mythology, we really wanted to expand it to a new city, which was New Delphi. Also Mallory, which was the town with the fire. It was just an opportunity to really give the fans more and also just expand the world, introduce new characters. But the mandate from the network was to just really, blow it out. Just do it as good as we can do it and make a great show.
So when you're blowing out the world, and you talk a lot about Cape Town with this, did you go like a location scouting around and then sort of work backwards into forming what New Delphi is going to be and the characters that you're going to find there? Or is it the other way around where you come up with it and then go find it?
We kind of came up with it and then went and found it. I knew from my experience on the pilot. I went there. I lived there for 3 months with Scott Stewart, who was the director of the pilot. We really just, I'd seen a lot of the area then. So I knew that it was diverse. I knew there was a lot of opportunities. I knew that we could do almost anything that we wanted to. And then really in the first 2-3 months of the writer's room, when we got back together in October, it was really just about, I knew it was going to be New Delphi. I knew Michael would be alone. So what's he doing? So then the idea of Mallory came up. And then once we had those concepts, then it was really about where can we find those locations. And, in Mallory, of course, you want it to look like Middle America, kind of the southern Middle America. You want it to be open plains and a white steeple church. And we found it in Cape Town.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a very diverse place.
It is.
The fact that you could have a dystopian Las Vegas right alongside a like Western town, as well as a more classic dystopian city that's like Blade Runner-esque in a way.
Yeah, one of the, we had a gentleman named Darren Sarafian join the show, and actually he did an episode of The Strain, first season of The Strain, since you guys cover The Strain as well. And he and I really worked to get the right people and also just find the right places to film and to the locations. He and I were in constant communication. He's the producing director, so he's down there on the ground. He directed the first 2 episodes. He directed the last 2 episodes. And really together we looked for, that perfect Mallory town. We actually found one location in South Africa that didn't work out, and we ended up in the location we ended up using, which turned out to be much, much better in terms of it really captured the essence of the small town.
Cool.
This location, Mallory, is actually one of my favorite parts of the show because up until this season, Michael hasn't really had more of his human side.
Yeah.
So you get to really see that humanity in him where he's saying, okay, I'm actually, I'm searching for my dad and I just can't find him. And I love the fact that he's always saying, where's my father? Where's my father? And she thinks it's a religious reference, and he just literally means, I don't know where my father is.
Yeah.
So you bring in this Christian mythology with Mallory. Was that an original intent, or did it just kind of
Christian
come
mythology?
to that? Yeah.
It's interesting. If you look at the altar in the main church, one of the things that they did as a town was they have they have every religion represented. Mm-hmm. There's literally icons of every religion. And the concept is really that all of these failed because he left. And so we had to create a new religion, which is the religion of Mallory, which is really about sacrifice and service and singing. So it's not so much a Christian mythology, it's more a mythology or a religion that grew up out of the remains of society after this angel war. And then also driven by this prophet who basically came and said, if you keep the fire and you confess your sins and you do these things, then you'll be protected. And that really is how the idea of Mallory came about.
I don't know if I'm getting into something you can't tell, but are we going to see how different people, not just in areas that we know like New Delphi or Helena, but in areas like this where Mallory, where you just, the people are still alive here in the random wilderness, are we going to see how other people are coping with this or in their own way?
In terms of how they survive in the world?
Yeah.
Yeah, for this season, it's such a big world. You have so much time. You only have so much time. You have 43 minutes, right?
Right.
But this season, we really learned how the people in Mallory have kind of dealt with this, how the people in New Delphi, and then a little bit of outside. The beauty of the world is that it's really we found this in the writers' room, is that you could go a million different ways and explore other groups of people that have kind of grown up out of the ashes, and what their society is like, and what their mores are like, and what their religion, or what the fact that they have faith or maybe no faith. That we just really kept it focused on the stories that we could tell, but certainly for future seasons we'll always kind of continue expanding out the world and learn about new people and new groups or what individuals, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think that's part of what's fascinating now that we've been introduced to New Delphi and to Mallory, is that not everything is set up like Vega. This is a very wide world, and there's a lot of differences that can arise just because people are different depending where you go. So let's talk about this episode, and we'll keep chatting with you as we go.
Since we're talking about the episode, I have a very important question. Will Pete be a regular?
Yes, he's a regular.
That's wonderful. I love him as a character. He's such a blast because he can't remember anything that happened basically past the war.
Yeah.
So I like that element he brings of this childish wonder.
He's great comic relief.
Yeah, he is great comic relief.
And Luke, the actor that plays Pete, is really, really natural and fun, and he did bring a nice kind of energy and comedy to it, but also humanity. you feel for him because he was an 8-ball, and then he got evicted, and he's struggling with kind of the fact that he doesn't remember. And no, he's a lot of fun. But so yeah, he's around in the whole season.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a great introduction to this little group of that's now ventured into New Delphi.
Yeah.
So let's deal with that. Let's talk about that right now, because we opened up, like we left last episode, where Alex is going to have to go into this maze of 8-balls to find a disc, a golden key. Jackie, what did you think of just his whole journey through this? I did not expect to find General Ryson hiding in a hole down there.
There were so many times I'm writing notes and I was like, what? That happened several times throughout this episode, and I mean, obviously the fans, I know we're gonna figure it out as it happens, but our major question is, like, how did he get here? Like, how did he get over to New Delphi, and why was he in New Delphi?
Yeah, General Ryson, he initially, if you remember last season, that's where he was going to go. That was where, we learned about it. He knew about New Delphi. He was the leader of Vega. He knew about it. One of the things that we kind of happened off screen was he and Clementine, the fact that she was an 8-ball, that was always kind of their secret dream. And so what brought him to New Delphi was that once he realized he was dying and he was sick and he had lost her, his daughter was now going to run Vega, he just decided to basically go there and see if it was what he thought it was. When he ended up getting there, it was different than
Yeah, I mean, I guess he pictured it as a place where 8-balls and humans can live together, which is true to an extent.
Yeah.
We find out that he murdered somebody.
Yeah.
He murdered probably an 8-ball.
Yeah.
In the town. I wonder if it's Clementine. We know he's guilty of killing somebody, but like we don't see her. So I don't know what the circumstances could have been, but he looks like he's been through hell. In this world, that's saying something. But it'd be interesting. I hadn't thought. That's literally just popped in my head right now. Jackie, you're like very deep in thought.
I mean, I'm actually thinking about farther ahead in the episode, so I don't know. I'm thinking about how. We get this big reveal at the end, and I don't know if you wanted to talk about that
please.
yet.
Anything with the General Ryson list?
Well, it has nothing to do with General Ryson. I was thinking you're just like you're responding to my face. But we get this big reveal at the end, and we find out why the town is okay with having these 8-balls there because it's run by an archangel. And I don't know, like a lot of the audience members realized that it was the same angel in the flashbacks, and I didn't, and I don't know if that, like, I feel kind of stupid about that, but I don't know if you guys intended for that, for him to be kind of, he was in the shadows in the flashbacks.
We definitely didn't want you to guess it. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh no, the actor Simon Merrills, who played him both parts, we really, I mean, they put on a prosthetic nose and cheekbones. I mean, I think even if he had been fully lit, you wouldn't have guessed it. Like, he really doesn't look like himself.
Yeah, I didn't get it until he, like, even he takes out the vase and like puts the key on it. I was thinking that he was going, like, until he took the axe out.
Yeah.
And they started doing the flashes, and it started to piece together, and then the axe, and it was like, oh.
Yeah.
And that was a cool reveal. Yeah. I did not see it coming.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yeah, I didn't see it coming at all, but some of the fans, they're so good at like pausing and rewatching that they were like, oh, I saw that because I heard the actor's voice, and I was like, I did not.
Oh, they're really good because I wouldn't have gotten it. I don't even think Simon spoke exactly. I think he actually changed his voice a little bit too.
It was to me, that was the big moment where I was like, holy crap, this is just a huge game changer. And now we have the mythology behind the amphorae. Is that how you say it?
The amphora is a singular, and amphorae are all of them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he has one of them, but we know there are like 7 or 8.
Yeah, 7 of them.
7 of them.
Yeah. I didn't even know it was the same actor until you just said it.
Which is great.
But so let's deal with Alex, because he's still in that maze. I mean, he finds it's all about. Vaughn, if you could just take a slide there.
Okay, you me. Good. Thumbs
Dealing
up.
cameras. But so while he's in there, he heals an 8-ball, or evicts an 8-ball, I should say. They're already healed. Yeah. But the big now General Ryson knows about that.
Yeah.
And so we get that reveal, and like it'll be interesting to see what he does with that. The 8-ball, or the evicted 8-ball, doesn't get out. But what I found really interesting about that whole thing, and it's sort of to get back to my point, they drop the point that these are 8-balls where the human body could not sustain. The human body wasn't built for occupation. Some angels can't bear its limits.
Yeah.
And that answered the question that we talked about last week, which was that why are some of the angels like patrolling the streets and others are like, we know them to be crazy.
And it's beasts.
Yeah, and I guess it's somewhat about just the body. The body can only take so much. Just like any person, like sometimes the mind can only handle so much stress.
You know, the 8-balls this season, it was an opportunity to really like fill in and create or dig in deeper into our own monster. We didn't want them to be like zombies, because there's plenty of zombie shows out there, and we didn't want them to be like vampires, because there's plenty of vampire shows. So it was really about taking the mythology we already had and making them really distinct. And so we really dug into the fact that they're angels. They're lower angels. They're the bottom tier angels, and they speak in Lishapis, which is creepy, as is almost like a possessed exorcist type vibe, the way they speak, and then also just the way they're varied. Some are insane and crazy monsters. Those are the ones that Julian puts in that thing because they can't in that prison, because they can't bear its limits, and they drives them mad. And that's a lot of them. The ones that are outside in the country, the ones that kind of attack anything that moves. There's a lot of those. A lot of them entered human bodies and didn't kind of make the transition. Then there's the types that are in New Delphi that are the patrol guys, and the guys that are actually living fairly civilized lives, and those are the ones that are a little more sophisticated, like Clementine last season, that actually get into a human body and they're able to have a fairly normal existence.
Yeah, I mean, Jackie, how did you feel about it? Did you like that turn? Do you think that there is still more to it?
As far as more to
how they function, like, well, I don't want to talk about we'll save the next on it for the spoiler wall, but
I think there was something very telling in I think it was the episode before, or maybe the first episode, when they first come to New Delphi and they say these angels are behaving differently, and obviously they're in a town that's run by an archangel, and now we know that, and now we know that maybe he knows more of the rules than we know.
Yeah. Well, he's a higher angel, right?
Oh, sorry, higher angel.
As opposed to because there's only 4 archangels.
Yeah.
Well, just on the topic of the 8-balls, on Twitter, Alex Lucatier wants to know about the design of the 8-balls and where that came from. Was that a carryover from like the Legion design?
Yeah, it was. It was. I think I'm almost positive in Legion they had black eyes, and so when I was brainstorming and figuring out the TV show, I wanted to give them a name, like a slang term that people would basically, like they say, walkers on the wall. I wanted to give it like its unique thing that people would call these things that they hate, right?
Yeah.
And basically 8-ball comes from the term 8-ball hemorrhage, where an 8-ball hemorrhage, you bleed from the brain into your eyes turn black, and so they call them 8-balls.
Yeah.
That's really
with the monster design, like, was it all sort of there already when you found the stuff with the teeth and everything like that?
I think it was. I think in the pilot we probably accentuated it and made it even more specific, but yeah, I think a lot of it originated in Legion.
Yeah, and I know that you guys have sort of dropped some of the stuff that, like, Legion had the big thing with like the dropping jaw that was really uncomfortably slick.
Yeah, the ice cream man.
Yeah. But that's sort of like you left that. Was that a conscious decision?
I think just in terms of a TV production, it isn't as easy to do. You want to do the special effects you want to do them really well, and you want to do the ones that you can do really well, and I think having all all these kind of, originally I did hope and I was thinking that the 8 balls were actually over the 25 years since the extermination where they were like mutating and they were actually learning how to change their bodies, and that would have been the ice cream man with the mouth and the soldier and the pilot with the tongue. And so that was originally the conceit, but I think once I got into the series and we got into the series, it just became a little bit, let's keep them specific and not, but there's an opportunity to always expand, and do cool new things. And
so let's talk a little bit about Sodom and Gomorrah.
Loving these flashbacks.
That was like, as I'm slowly piecing together like where we are. I mean, I love just going back to like the biblical times at all, but then the reveal of Sodom and them being at Sodom and Gomorrah, because of course they would be. These are the angels that would stand and judge humans. Were you? I mean, this seems like, I guess it's the big. Just like, other than Egypt, it's the big judgment story. So is it just like you knew from like the get-go, we're going to Sodom and Gomorrah if we're going back? Yeah,
that was really, really early on. That was one that I knew we would do. There's a lot of cool, biblical stories. There's a lot of really epic, interesting biblical stories that you could insert our characters in and give them a new spin. And that was one that I thought was just and the idea to just kind of do it in a tent overlooking it and keep it really contained and keep it about the brothers, and meant that we didn't even have to blow it out in terms of production design, and we were able to keep it contained,
but it still felt like you were there. It felt like you were there for all the important stuff. The destruction, you knew what that looked like just in your mind.
You didn't need to show it. We showed a little bit when the burning cities, but you didn't need to. And that's an example of Cape Town. I mean, those dunes, because it starts with Gabriel like looking at Sodom and Gomorrah, and then he walks to the tent where they all where they're basically planning their attack.
And this was sort of more of the question of like, who's the good guy in this story?
Watching this episode, I was wondering now, since we had the flashbacks, when we were going to get that moment where Michael turns around and says, "What I've been doing is terrible," and this episode had that moment where he was like, I don't think I've been doing the right thing, and we still haven't hit the moment for Gabriel where he flips. And I was wondering if we're going to see something like that in maybe a flashback coming up.
Yeah, last season they were much more clearly, towards the end of the season, we started to have a realization that Gabriel and Michael maybe weren't so distinctly good or bad. And I knew that one of the things I really, really wanted to do in this season was to go back and show what are the moments that Michael turned good and Gabriel turned evil. And this is really, the Sodom and Gomorrah flashback is really the beginning. It's the kind of the crack in Gabriel. We're definitely going to see the shattering, where we see what turned him.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was really fascinating to watch Michael's journey through this flashback, like just his arc in it, like going in talking about the blood causing the snow to steam, and he just like, I love when, it's instead of I love the smell of napalm in the morning, I love the steam that comes off fresh blood hitting the snow. Like, whoa, dude.
And he kept justifying it because he was like, I'm doing it because my dad told me to do it. It's like, we wonder how many times people do things because it's like, not just like your parents would tell you, but someone in a position of power asks you to do something, and you begin to enjoy it because you're pleasing that person, but you don't realize maybe this isn't what I should be doing.
The way that came about was the idea that he's a soldier, but he really enjoys battle. Too much. And he doesn't really realize it until later in that episode when he goes and he sees what Lyrae does. And that really wakes him up, especially when Lyrae says, you're my muse, you're my, you've been everything to me, and you're the reason I am what I am. And Michael is literally like, oh no, what have I...
Yeah, I mean, it raises an interesting philosophical question of, if you inspire somebody to do evil, to do bad things, how responsible are you? Because the Michael that we know in the modern day is very brooding and thinking about like all of the things, especially now that he's in Mallory and being forced to face these questions. He's having to deal with the idea of like what is he responsible for, and so I would almost compare it to J.D. Salinger with Catcher in the Rye, and like he wrote a book, but that book, without meaning to, inspired some really terrible people to do some really terrible things and kill some people and other people to try to kill. How much can you, I guess, not that there's a good answer for this, and you shouldn't blame the person who causes it or like blame the author, but how much guilt can you carry around for bringing about this destruction through your words, through your actions, even if you didn't mean to?
Yeah, I think and Tom and Simon and Carl in that scene were also good together, but the moment when he drags him in and he basically throws him down and he lists off all these horrible things he's just done, I think for Michael that is the moment that he realizes, my zealot, my enjoyment of battle and the fact that I've been such a zealot to basically carry out my father's orders has created this, and it's my fault. And that's why later in the episode he literally says to Gabriel, "Do to me what I just did to him." And Gabriel's like, "No, I won't do it." But I do think he does feel responsible for. Yeah,
and he continues to this day.
He does.
I mean, just that moment where he was in Mallory, just talking about like everything that he's done. Like he in his mind he tortured those people.
Yes,
I think.
I actually, drawing on that, there in the Christian mythology, you have the New Testament and the Old Testament, and this, you see a very Old Testament God, the smiting God. And do you think that maybe God has evolved as Michael's evolving? Do you think maybe he has, and that's why he's gone?
It's interesting that you said that, because it is very much an Old Testament world, much more so than New. I think that I do think that if we get 5 or 6 seasons to tell that story, I think that we would find at the end a father who has evolved. And who, if as much as a God can evolve, I think the surprises and what we would look back on in terms of the series would go, wow, this was not atoning, but a new test in a way that showed a new perspective than an Old Testament kind of smite thee and.
So when you guys, this is I guess a bigger question in a lot of ways, but the way that you approach writing the God character, do you treat the concept of God as a person in the sense of like, do you treat it as somebody who has wants and desires, or as more, because a lot of like content these days that deals with the idea of God treats him as an ethereal concept? How do you guys approach it in the writers' room?
I personally, and also the writers' room, we think of him very much as a father. We just keep it really simple, non-denominational. I'm not interested in talking about or making having a point of view really about any religion. Right. It's really about a father who has abandoned his sons, and the sons happen to be the angels, and then by default we also were abandoned by him because he's our father too. So it's that simple. So like when we talk about him in the writer's room, it really is that. It's nothing more complicated than that. As a matter of fact, when I imagine him as a character, I imagine him as a father. That simple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. That's how it plays on the show. Yeah. Before we move off of Sodom and Gomorrah, I went back and I was reading a little bit of like the tale in the Bible of Sodom and Gomorrah, and I found it very interesting to see that like part of the story is about there are 5 cities in that area right by the Dead Sea, and 4 of them had aligned, the kings of those cities had aligned to rebel against their king, the King Shador. I cannot pronounce that name. I'm just calling him King C. But he then had to go and gather a bunch of soldiers from other cities around to like really fortify and to keep the rebels down as long as he could until they eventually overtook him. And just playing that in this episode right up against Claire, who's dealing with a rebellion of her own within her city, especially with all these different the V levels, as like almost as like they're heads of each V level, and they're not happy with their king. It was an interesting parallel. I'm not sure if it was intentional or not because it's a real deep cut into the Bible, but I mean, just when you're dealing with fathers and kings and all that, there's a lot of parallels there. Just the idea of rebelling or abandonment. I just thought it was interesting.
I think one of the things I think informs all the storylines is the father, king, family. If you look at Claire and her father, and David Wheel and his son William, and Michael and his father and his brother, and Alex and Jeep, and the fact that he was abandoned. I mean, it all is under the umbrella of really that thematic. So yeah, it informs all the stories.
So I want to get into Mallory and Michael. Like, I think Jackie and I agree. Our favorite plot line this season. There's just something fascinating about what's happening there, in large part because the mystery. I think I think and a lot of the fans have really latched onto the mystery of the prophet.
And the question of, I know you can't answer this, but the question of who is the prophet, and I guess really why did they come there? Like, were they actually coming there to help the people, or did they have some sort of ulterior motive? Because we have these worlds that are created where people do have ulterior motives. So now we're like, well, is this a benevolent creator or not? And it's you're as an audience member struggling with the same thing that Michael is struggling with almost.
I mean, the obvious place that we've been going, and it's just like because it's fire, and also because it's one of two higher, like not higher angels, but up like archangels, and then I don't know if. Does Lucifer qualify as an archangel? Yeah,
in our mythology, we think about him as an archangel.
Okay.
He's the only one that was born alone, and he was born first. He's the older brother.
Right.
So unlike the two twins, the Uriel and Raphael and Gabriel and Michael, he is singular in the way that he was first and kind of foremost.
So there's basically, if we break it down, there's two archangels out there that we have not met yet. Uriel is off, maybe dead, probably not, from the bomb that got dropped. But we've met her. Lucifer seems the obvious choice because of fire. The idea of eating, like I'm thinking of it as eating sins, sort of Sleep Hollow-esque a little bit. And that plays with a hell aspect. And now we're introduced to the idea of sacrifice, or the leader killing themselves, and we see the fire go down right before, and then at the sacrifice the fire goes up. As a new soul passes over to the other side. That all seems to play to Lucifer. Reading the Dominion Revelations storyline on SyFy.com, Raphael's big thing is that she likes the idea of toying with humans' intelligence and studying them as almost like a case studies, like what would happen if I did this. So I could totally also see Raphael walking around the earth setting up different scenarios in like this, just like, now I can, they're all separated, no more cell phones, they're just like different little like
studies.
It's a lab. You isolate the lab group from each other and introduce these rules to this society, these rules to this society. What happens? Let this one just do their own thing, but they get protected. This one, they have to confess their sins and sacrifice their leader every 5 years. I don't know, Jackie, who do you have a favor on theories right now?
My theories are the same as yours. Like those are the two I'm zeroing in on, and I know you can't talk to specifically who it is in charge of the town, but will we eventually see those two characters, since they're like, I think the fans are like, they were mentioned on the website, you know?
Ooh, that would be a bit of a spoiler. I don't know if I can say that.
If you can, it's okay.
I think we will eventually see those two characters. Yeah.
It seems like they're the big five.
Yeah, I mean, look, in terms of the series, definitely. In terms of this year, I'm not sure.
Right.
We'll have to see.
You gotta hold some card back.
Right, exactly.
Like, we need a season 3. Do you want to meet Lucifer?
Take some out.
How does that work in terms of like picking characters that are either specifically from the Bible versus creating new ones? So like we met Leray, am I pronouncing that right?
Leray, yeah.
In this episode, is he? I was trying to find if that was like an actual biblical character.
There's, in the writer's room, we literally have these books of the angels, angel mythology, angel definitions, and literally there's tens of thousands of them. So,
okay.
One of the things I wanted to do, and we really just tried to do as a group, is just keep it simple. Lower angels are the ones that have no bodies. They live in the kind of the outer sphere away from Father's light. You've got the higher angels who do have their bodies, and they're like Furiad and Lyrae and these others. They're strong and whatever, but they're not kind of the highest tier, which is the archangels. Just really keep it simple. So creating new angels or mythology for the world is just something, it's really a lot of fun. So it's like, we're not really constricted by anything. I mean, I guess in some religions there's 7 archangels, and in some there's more, and some there's less. It's just about whatever works for Dominion and for the story.
You picked these rules, and then you sort of let it play.
Totally.
Find something cool? Great.
Yeah. And look, I mean, Lyrae is a higher angel. We saw him basically lose his body, and now he's in New Delphi. So what's that? So we'll get to learn,
I like the start of this mythology because it started to answer one of my questions, which was what happens because angels are hard to kill. So what happens when you can actually kill one? Because Michael gets to that point where he's like, okay, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to release your body, and it's going to be stuck in this area. And so now as fans, we know, okay, well, this is what can happen if you kill an angel. They're banished to an area, and now we know there's some sort of possibility for them to come back.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess it's a possession similar to an 8-ball, but if it's a higher angel,
what does that mean?
What does that change? I mean, clearly he can hide it, similar to the way that Michael and the other higher angels could hide within Vega. Without being caught. He can keep the eyes simple, keep his teeth looking normal.
He doesn't kind of have those outward identifiers like 8-balls do. I mean, he really, Michael is in that moment when it's basically, he's like a general, right? And he's punishing him, and he's actually meting out judgment right there. Mm-hmm. He and Gabriel, and they alone can do that. Let's say Furiad would not have been able to do that to Lyrae.
Oh,
it really was a rank thing.
I see.
And that's why when Lyrae is down there and Michael's doing it, he's like, Gabriel, stop him. Mm-hmm. Don't let him do this.
Yeah.
And all those little details are always so much fun to brainstorm, and the group comes up with them, and it's always a blast.
Yeah. So just going back to Mallory for a second. So we got real quick, what happened in the big points. Michael made out with Laurel. I guess she was just like, look, I'm gonna die tomorrow.
Yeah.
You're really attractive. And Michael, I think he probably misses Becca at this point, right? There's a little bit of that. Similar hair color.
Yeah, I think
he's got a type.
And a lot of regret.
Yeah.
I mean, he's walking around, tormented over the fact of what he did.
But I like that he sees in her, as opposed to Becca, he sees in her what, a renewal of his faith. He makes that point that he's like, I came here and I learned something. And
I really, the script was written by one of our writers, Becky Kirsch, and there's a line in there where he says, I can't remember exactly what it was, but to paraphrase, it was like, everything died in the world was destroyed, and yet not everything that was beautiful and was lost, basically.
Okay, I'm trying to see, because I thought...
And it so beautifully sums up kind of his point of view about his experience in Mallory and how that's kind of reborn in him some faith and some
which
hope.
faith as a thought process for people who know is a very strange concept. Like when you're given evidence of God, of archangels, of all this stuff, I guess my question is it really even faith anymore? Can you really call it faith if you know the answers?
It's interesting. I mean, I've never thought about it like that, but that is interesting. And I think that, what it is? It's faith. It's faith manifesting in belief, a belief that things can be better, that they won't all be destroyed, they won't all die in war, that maybe the chosen one and the fact that he's trying to help that journey and the mission that he has will succeed. I think that he knows that there's a God, so his faith is actually focused on doing what he thinks his father wants him to do.
So faith that faith in God and in the case of the people of Mallory, the prophet will lead them the right way. They know what they have to do. They know that they have seeming proof that this person is out there, but still trusting. So it's the faith as trust that this is the right path.
Yeah, and to see her conviction, the fact that he sees in her like the ability to believe in something and do something so drastic as to sacrifice herself to save the people that she basically cares for in the town is very, for him, it's inspiring. It kind of reminds him why he's here and what he's supposed to do.
Yeah. And then, oh, sorry, Jackie.
So I have more of like a technical question. I know there's only certain ways you can kill an angel. So he stabs himself, and for all appearances, they believe him to be dead. And for the town, it seemed to count. So do you see it as like he did have like some sort of small death that counted for the prophet in the town to protect it?
Yeah, I mean that's something that we'll find out.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I mean the way I looked at it, like so he stabs himself with like the knife, and I was like rewinding.
Cheats.
I was like watching. I'm like, was that his knife or her knife? Okay, it was her knife.
Well, remember when he goes to her and he actually looks at the knife?
Yes. Yeah.
He says, "You're going to use this," and he literally like checks it out and then he hands it back to her. He knows it's not.
Yeah, he's making sure it's like, I'm not going to really die. All right, that's cool.
And that moment was so great with the when his wing comes up out of the ground, because you see all the zombie stories with a hand always coming out of the ground, and so it was a perfect moment. It's his wing.
It's funny. I love to hear you say that, because that was the network. The network basically said, we've seen the hand so many times. Can we do something else? And then the idea of the wing came out, and it really worked.
Awesome.
So it was cool. It was a cool note.
It's a unique visual. Yeah. At the very least, it was very cool to watch. I guess the question is, in regards to the prophet at this point, what did the prophet know that it was Michael? If it is Raphael or Lucifer, in theory, because Laurel turns to the altar and asks permission, seems that she gets a response, which I'm assuming she's not just insane, so that she did get some sort of response. Did the prophet know that this was Michael, like the archangel Michael, their brother, who was going to sacrifice something? In that case, they know that he's not going to die, but they agreed to it anyway. The fire came back on as he died. So was it that they were tricked by Michael, or was this if it's Raphael doing a study, what is this going to do to the town now that he dies and comes back? Has that changed their faith? Or if it's Lucifer, is he now taking a piece of Michael? Jacque, I'm curious. But Vaun knows the answer.
Yeah, but so far only one person knows that he actually came back. So far, it's only that jerk guy, whose name I forgot. The guy who's
Wes.
the town jerk, as I called him last episode.
Town jerk.
I guess it's the question: is he going to reveal himself to anyone else, or is he going to like watch from the skies? If he reveals himself, he could be trying to like take over prophet duty. As like because if he comes back and they don't think I do have to wonder though that nobody in this town is like meets a stranger from the wilderness named Michael and is like, there's a real important angel named Michael.
But they don't know that.
Oh yeah, they don't. It's
know
been
that.
such an insular society that really has been. I mean, they are like a bubble. They're living in a bubble. And it's not that they haven't heard some things, and they've probably heard of the archangel Gabriel and the archangel Michael, but the dude walks in and no.
Michael's common enough of it.
Yeah, they're not thinking that's him.
Well, because they're connected enough to have the story of the child, of the chosen one, and that carried.
Yeah, that carried, and it was interesting. And one of the things that that came out in the writers' room was the idea that, she had heard the story, and it was a little bit different than what Michael had heard. He's like, oh, I've never heard it told quite like that.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, some people do come in from outside, but it is in general a fairly, insular little society.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. That's sort of the appeal of this town, is that they're so isolated.
Yeah,
this really is the old West.
Yeah,
where whatever else goes on in the world is unimportant.
Yeah. And they're just surrounded by monsters, right?
Yeah.
They're like
literally
surrounded monsters.
They
so it's
don't
like,
get much news.
There's not really. If anybody makes it in, it's usually someone who's like had to fight their way in, and it's like yeah.
Yeah, and before we run out of time, let's talk real quick about
the Claire story.
Vega and Claire, punk rock Claire, as I've decided to call her now. It's like she keeps coming in. She's the leader of this society, but she comes in. She looks like she belongs on stage with a bass guitar.
Roxanne would love to hear that.
It's her evolution.
Yeah, I mean she looks great, but it's just funny to see.
It's interesting. When you think about designing a costume for that specific character, what do you put her in?
Yeah,
right?
She's not really military.
She's not a general. She's not military. Also, she's really had access to what would be left over, right, in Vega, which is, they're in Caesar's Palace, so she's got the forum shops, right? So you have to kind of think about like what she would have access to, and then also, she's a beautiful actress. You want to make her look hot. And
I guess that makes sense. Like, what clothes do you find if you take over Vegas?
It's like she's not going to wear. She's not trying to be her father, so she's not going to wear some kind of a specific military or governmental.
And then she's not like pantsuit type, really.
Yeah, so it's a tricky. Of all the characters, interestingly enough, it's probably the trickiest one to find a costume for.
Yeah,
to get the right.
I do like the evolution of like in the very first episode of the series, she has this kind of like flower garland, and she's very reminiscent of like a Greek or Roman goddess, and then you kind of have her change into this like almost Xena warrior princess, not to that extreme, but more like you said, a punk rock kind of thing.
I think the interesting thing about it is I think that of all the characters, her arc is very much demonstrated not only in her behaviors and her scenes and her arcs in episodes, but also she started very pure. She had the flowers. She was very almost like a virginal princess, and slowly but surely, she's having to bump up against reality, and reality is changing her, and she's becoming more serious and more down to earth, and really more. She's having to grow up.
I mean, when I watched this episode, I was like, a pregnant lady just shot a man in the leg. That happened.
It's really funny when you put it like that, but that's what happened.
Well, yeah, in this world, you don't have much choice.
Exactly.
I mean, you don't,
But I keep thinking of, like, she is, I do like the fact that she is pregnant, but nobody's treating her with kid gloves. It's like, she's still the ruler. She's still the lady of the town.
Yeah.
Well, how many people know that in Vega at this point?
Not that many.
I think it's like, basically,
I think Erika knows, and I don't even... No, David didn't even know.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't know. So
No.
very few people. But
not
even if
showing
they
yet.
did, they wouldn't. It's just the world is just a really tough place. It's just not.
Yeah, but I think like if your leader is like pregnant theoretically, and in this society where there's family, like stuff passes down in families,
Yeah.
that child has to, and like so her being pregnant, you
would
treat it
matter.
very, very carefully
Yeah.
because it is a royal issue.
Yeah.
At that point, but we also get a new character with Grant.
Yeah.
Old baseball fan.
And
Yeah.
there's some. I'm not
Gates.
making.
Gates.
Gates, yeah.
Gates.
Yeah.
I'm not making
Oh,
this
yeah,
up,
yeah.
but Gates and her have sort of like a romantic kind of thing going
They
on.
have good chemistry.
Okay,
Yeah. Nick
okay.
and Roxanne have really good chemistry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cates?
Gates.
Gates.
Oh no, I'm trying to make a ship name now.
Clates.
Plates.
I guess it's sort of close to Cleats, so
Yeah,
it
that's close
works for
enough.
he's very obsessed with the Curse of the Bambino.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like that as a metaphor, and of course it means just like, I don't know, baseball. Like, those things over there?
Yeah.
I've never seen anyone use those. But I like this character. He seems they fit together because they both have a very charitable nature. Like, they want to help the lower class. Like, he does it as much as he can. He just lets people siphon juice. Like, he's not going to report like an extra light bulb on.
Yeah.
And you can see her she's like, no, I just didn't know that you did that. That's really adjust her shirt a little bit.
I know this is random, but there's a scene where he comes and sits next to her and literally starts like eating off her plate. Do you know if that was like an actor choice or?
I think that was a Nick Bishop choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that was in the script.
I thought it was such a cute moment because it shows these characters have known each other for a while, and it shows how comfortable he is with her.
Yeah. And I think he's also a bit of an eccentric, and he doesn't care.
Yeah.
He's just that guy.
Yeah,
No,
I mean, he's an interesting character. I'm excited to see what he does now that the idea of traitor, like how many other traitors are in my military, like that concept being introduced. I mean, this is a scary time for her. Like, we know that she wants to help as much as she can. She wants to change the system from within, but from the outside, it just looks like this is another bureaucrat. V1 who's gonna, or V6 rather, who's gonna step on the V1s and just like push them as much as he can. They don't know that she was trying to give them like a bunch of floors that then burned down by somebody else's hand. So the question is, how will she prove that to people? And now she's oppressing a rebellion. The idea of a civil war was mentioned this week, and it feels like that's just the mention of it makes it inevitable. That's what she's going to be dealing with. Jackie, I mean, how do you feel at the end of this episode? We get the introduction that the idea that now at Alex's hands, Vega and New Delphi are sort of in an alliance, but where does that leave Claire? In this, like she basically like Alex has made her agree to an alliance without any of her consent. A defector has agreed to ally your city with somebody else. What do you do?
It's interesting because she's also kind of like, without knowing, like aligned to Helena because Eureka's there, but she doesn't know who she really is. So I know one of the episodes has Helena in the name, so we're gonna eventually see Helena, right?
It's not one of the titles, but it's in the.
It's in the Revelations
it's in the
on the site. Chapter 13 is apparently Helena, City of Women. So we'll at least like mention it at the end of the season. But we're running low on time, and so in lieu of predictions, I want to talk to Vaun a little bit more about the show. The Divine Miss L, Liv Colbert on Twitter wants to know, the writing this season has been so much darker and grittier. Is that trend going to continue? And who in the Dominion room has the most twisted vision?
Yes, it is going to continue. It is a darker, grittier season, definitely. Probably me.
They're all like, "Whoa, Vaun! Like, I don't know if we can do that."
I'm certainly one of the worst in the writers' room, I would say. But we're all pretty, as a group, we're very, we're pretty well balanced. and there's people that are kind of the big idea people. There's people that are mythology people. There are people that are writers that are really good with the characters. I think we've got a really good mix. But the dark people, I'm probably one of the dark ones.
Yeah, Tanya wants to know, is this season going to get much darker as we go forward?
Yeah, I think that, one of the things I wanted to do this season was really just, as if this happened, if this really happened, what would it be like? It'd be a dangerous place, and I think it is.
Yeah. Is there anything that big that you want to tease that we can look forward to this season? And next week we see a little spoilers for next week from the previews, but we saw an army of I'm assuming slightly more evolved 8-balls. It basically in the basement of New Delphi. I got an army in the basement. Yeah.
We're gonna have more flashbacks, more biblical stuff, more ancient time stuff.
Awesome.
Which is, I love doing that. And it's a very big, epic season with big twists and turns. I think people are going to be really surprised by all that goes on.
Okay. I mean, this season, I guess the final question, so this season you got 13 instead of 8. Did that feel more freedom with
so exciting.
5 more episodes?
I mean, 8, look, it's all wonderful. Getting to make a TV show is always a wonderful thing. 8 was tight for how big of a show it is, but it was great. 13 is fantastic because it's just so much more space to tell big stories, do these flashbacks, to introduce new characters, new worlds. It was a good amount. 13 is a really good number. 22 people that do the 22 on network and stuff. I mean, that is wow. I mean,
we've actually said that 13 is one of our favorite episode numbers.
It feels like a really good number.
It's I think that just looking at the TV shows that I've watched recently, there are some shows that do. There are very few shows that do 22 episodes very well.
Yeah, you probably have more stinkers just by the very nature of having to do 22.
You wind up with filler content here and there. I won't call out any shows in particular. I might have covered one last year.
Someone told me once that John Wells said that, after 22 episodes, if you can have 10 great episodes and 7 good ones, you might have 4 stinkers. Just by the very nature of,
the amount.
And I would say 13, boy, it just gave us so much more room, and we had more story to tell. So we ended the 13, and we could have told more stories.
And that's great. I mean, that's hopefully what we get for season 3.
Yeah.
Which fans who you're watching this, you should retweet and tweet information and questions so that we can get #Dominion trending on Twitter.
That would be great.
Yeah, I mean, be sure, guys, we've said it before, but if you watch the show live, you can follow along on Twitter with Vaun and some of the other cast doing live tweets, right? You guys are
Thursday night. We're going to do a big tweet out. We do it every week, and we get almost the entire cast doing it.
Yeah, and so you can't get that experience if you don't watch it live. If you're not working, just find a way to get to your TV, watch it live with your computer open. Your computer's open anyway, and you can follow along. And that's a unique experience that you can't get anywhere else but live. And watching live is also a huge way to support the show. It helps keep the show on the air.
Yes, and if not live, DVR, watch it in 3 days.
Yeah, watch as quickly as you can.
Watch it.
All right. Well, Vaun, between now and then for the live tweet, where can the people follow you?
I'm at Vaun WIlmott on Twitter, and I think that's it. I have an Instagram, but I don't really use it.
And Jackie, where can people keep up with you?
At 123 Jackie_B on Twitter.
All right. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Zach Wilson, THATZACHWILSON, and also a couple other shows here at AfterBuzz, Killjoys and the Strain, also with Jackie.
Yes.
Guys, I'm Zach Wilson, and thanks for geeking out with us.
And thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
Thank you guys. Thanks, guys.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.